The transport ship touched down on Kavar Prime just after dawn. Red dust swirled across the landing pad as the engines cooled. Ji-won grabbed her tool case and stepped onto the ramp, squinting against the harsh alien sun. This was her 5th frontier contract, but each new world still made her stomach tight with nerves. The mining colony sprawled before her like a collection of gray metal boxes scattered across rust-colored rock. In the distance, massive drilling rigs punched into the planet's surface, pulling out rare minerals that corporations back on Earth would pay fortunes for. But Ji-won wasn't here for the mining. She was here to fix the machines that kept breaking down in this hostile environment. A tall figure waited at the edge of the landing pad. Very tall. Ji-won looked up and up, taking in the creature that stood nearly 8 feet high. His body was covered in dark fur that caught the light like polished metal. His face was long and angular, wolf-like, with amber eyes that tracked her movement with predatory focus. He wore armor plates across his chest and shoulders, and a plasma rifle hung casually from one clawed hand. This was a veteran. Ji-won had seen pictures, read the briefing files, but nothing prepared her for standing in front of one. "You are the human engineer." His voice was deep, more growl than speech. It wasn't a question. "Yes, Ji-won Park. I'm here to work on the excavation equipment." The veteran's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked her up and down, and Ji-won knew what he was seeing. A human woman, barely 5.5 feet tall. Thin from too many meals, skipped to save credits for better tools. She wore standard work coveralls and carried a single case of equipment. No weapons, no armor, no backup. "I am Commander Thalvin. I lead the security force for this colony." He turned, without waiting for her response. "Follow." Ji-won hitched her case higher and followed him across the compound. Other veterans moved through the base, all of them massive and armed. They stopped to watch her pass, their alien faces unreadable, but their body language clear enough. They didn't want her here. She'd seen this before on other colonies, other worlds. Humans were considered weak by most species. Too small, too fragile, too soft. The fact that humanity had clawed its way to the stars through stubborn determination and clever engineering didn't seem to matter much to warriors who could tear through steel with their bare hands. Thalvin led her past training yards where veterans sparred with blades and guns, past storage facilities, past what looked like a medical station. Finally, they reached a small building near the center of the compound. "Your quarters." Thalvin gestured to a door. "You will work on the drilling equipment in Sector 7. Reports say the hydraulic systems fail every few days. Fix it. I'll need to examine the systems first. Run diagnostics. Fix it." Thalvin's tone left no room for discussion. "You have 1 week. If the equipment is not operational by then, your contract is void." He started to walk away, then paused. "Do not wander the compound after dark. Do not enter the northern buildings. Do not approach the warriors during training. And stay away from the den area." "The den area? Where the young are kept. They do not need to see a human." Something cold settled in Ji-won's chest at the dismissive tone, but she kept her face neutral. "Understood, Commander." Thalvin left without another word. Ji-won watched him go, then let herself into her assigned quarters. The room was small and bare. Just a bed, a desk, and a locker. A single window looked out over the compound. She could see the den area from here, a larger building with reinforced walls and a small yard enclosed by fencing. As she unpacked her tools, movement caught her eye. 3 small figures tumbled out of the den building, playing in the yard. Veteran pups, she realized. They looked like wolf cubs, all fur and oversized paws, wrestling and chasing each other in circles. The smallest one, with lighter gray fur, kept getting knocked down by the other 2 but bounced back up each time with what looked like determination. Ji-won smiled despite herself. Young ones were the same everywhere, it seemed. Over the next 3 days, Ji-won worked on the drilling equipment from sunrise to sunset. The problem was worse than the reports suggested. The hydraulic systems were failing because nobody had properly maintained them. Seals were cracked, fluid lines were clogged with mineral dust, and half the safety sensors had been bypassed. It was a disaster, waiting to happen. She worked alone. The veteran workers gave her a wide berth, communicating only through curt messages on her datapad. During meal times, she ate in her quarters, heating ration packs on a small, portable stove. The colony had a cafeteria, but the one time she'd tried to enter, the conversations had stopped. Every eye in the room had turned to her. She'd grabbed a ration pack from the dispenser and left. It was better to be alone anyway. Less complicated, but she couldn't help watching the pups when she had a moment. From her window, from the pathway between her quarters and the work site, she'd catch glimpses of them playing. The smallest one, the gray one, had a habit of wandering to the edge of the yard and staring out at the compound as if looking for something. On the fourth day, Jiwon saw Thalven for the first time since her arrival. He was drilling his warriors in the training yard, his voice carrying across the compound as he barked orders. Even among the other veterans, he stood out. Bigger, faster, more controlled. His movements had the precision of someone who'd spent a lifetime learning how to kill efficiently. Later that afternoon, she saw him with the pups. The three young ones rushed to him when he entered their yard, and the fierce warrior seemed to transform. He lowered himself to their level, letting them climb on him, his clawed hands gentle as he checked each one over. The smallest pup, the gray one, wrapped her small arms around his neck and wouldn't let go. Jiwon felt something tighten in her chest. For all his cold efficiency, Thalven clearly loved his children. That evening, Jiwon heard raised voices near the command center. She glanced out her window and saw Thalven speaking with several officers, studying a holographic map. His expression was serious, his body tense. One of the officers gestured to the north, where hostile territory began beyond the mining boundary. Something was happening. The next morning, she woke to the sound of engines and organized movement. Through her window, she watched as Thalven led a group of warriors toward the main gate. They were armed for serious combat, carrying heavy weapons and supply packs. This wasn't a patrol. This was a mission into dangerous territory. Thalven paused at the gate, looking back toward the den area. Even from this distance, Jiwon could see the tension in his posture. Then he turned and led his warriors out into the wasteland beyond. The compound felt different with him gone. Quieter. More tense. The remaining warriors doubled their patrols, and everyone moved with the careful awareness of people expecting trouble. Jiwon went back to work on the drilling equipment, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go very wrong. 3 days passed with no word from Thalven's team. The compound grew more tense with each hour. Warriors snapped at each other during patrol changes. The communication officer checked her equipment constantly, waiting for a signal that didn't come. Jiwon kept working, but she found herself glancing toward the main gate more often than she should. It wasn't her business. She was just here to fix machines, collect her payment, and move on to the next contract. Getting involved with colony politics or military operations was a good way to end up dead on a frontier world. Still, she thought about those 3 pups playing in their yard, about how Thalven had looked at them before leaving. On the 4th morning, Jiwon was calibrating a pressure valve when alarms screamed across the compound. She jerked upright, nearly dropping her wrench. Warriors ran toward the main gate, weapons ready. The communication officer's voice crackled over the speakers, speaking in the veteran language too fast for Jiwon's translator to keep up. She climbed down from the drilling rig and moved toward the edge of the work area, staying out of the way but needing to see what was happening. The gate opened. A military transport limped through, smoke trailing from its damaged engine. The vehicle had blast marks across its armored sides, and one of the wheels was shredded. It lurched to a stop in the center of the compound. Warriors poured out, many of them injured. Jiwon saw burns, deep cuts, one veteran cradling an arm that bent at the wrong angle. Medical personnel rushed forward with stretchers and equipment. Then she saw Thalven. Two warriors supported him between them, practically carrying him. His armor was cracked and scorched. Dark blood, almost black, soaked his side and dripped onto the ground. His face was pale beneath his fur, his eyes unfocused. But even wounded, he was giving orders, his voice rough but commanding. The medical officer, a smaller veteran with gray streaks in her fur, examined him quickly. Her expression grew serious. She barked something to her assistants, and they brought a stretcher. Thalvin tried to wave them off, tried to walk on his own, but his legs gave out. The warriors caught him before he hit the ground. Jiwan's hands clenched around her wrench. She'd seen battlefield injuries before, on other contracts, other worlds. That much blood loss was dangerous for any species. They carried Thalvin toward the medical building, the doctor jogging alongside, already preparing injections. The other wounded were being triaged, sorted by severity. The compound had erupted into controlled chaos. Jiwan forced herself to turn back to her work. Not her business, not her fight. But an hour later, she heard angry voices from the medical building. She was close enough to make out some of the words. The medical officer was arguing with one of Thalvin's subordinates, a scarred warrior named Drevak, who seemed to be second in command. The wound is too deep. He needs surgery, proper medicine. I don't have the equipment. Then use what you have. It's not enough. The plasma burned deep into his tissue. I can treat the surface, prevent infection, but without proper surgical tools. Do what you can, he will heal. He's alpha. The doctor's response was sharp with frustration. But she went back inside. Through the window, Jiwan could see her working over Thalvin's still form on the medical bed. Jiwan bit her lip. She had medical training, basic field surgery that all frontier contractors learned. She had a few tools in her personal kit, better than standard issue. But she was human. They'd never accept help from her. She went back to work. That evening, she returned to her quarters as the sun set. The compound was quiet now, the controlled chaos replaced by grim determination. Extra patrols moved through the pathways. Warriors stood guard at the medical building. From her window, Jiwan looked toward the den area. The three pups were sitting at the edge of their yard, staring toward the medical building. Even from here, she could see how still they were, how scared. The next morning, Jiwan woke early and checked the medical building from her window. Warriors came and went, but there was no sign that Thalvin had improved. One of the guards she passed in the compound mentioned that the regular medical supply ship wasn't due for another 4 days. 4 days. Could Thalvin survive that long? At midday, she saw Drevak emerge from the medical building, his expression dark. He was speaking to another officer in low tones. Jiwan caught fragments as she walked past with her tool case. The fever is worse. The doctor says his body is fighting the infection, but the young ones keep asking for him. They cannot see him like this. It would frighten them. Jiwan kept walking, but her steps slowed. The pups. Who was caring for them, with Thalvin injured, and the entire security force on high alert? That afternoon, she found out. She was walking past the den area when she heard crying. The smallest pup, the gray one, was sitting alone in the yard. The other two were nowhere in sight. A bowl of food sat untouched near the fence. As Jiwan watched, a warrior approached the yard, dropped another bowl of food over the fence without entering, and left immediately. He was needed elsewhere. Everyone was needed elsewhere. The little pup looked at the food but didn't move toward it. Jiwan's chest tightened. She knew she should walk away. This wasn't her concern. These weren't her people, and they'd made it clear she wasn't wanted here. But that was a child sitting alone and scared. And Jiwan had never been good at walking away from that. She completed her work for the day and returned to her quarters as the sun set. Through her window, she could see the medical building. Lights burned inside, and she could make out shadows of the medical staff working. The situation wasn't improving. Late that night, she heard a sound that made her heart stop. A roar, deep and pain-filled. From the medical building, Thalvin, even wounded and fevered, The Alpha's voice carried across the compound. Warriors rushed toward the building. Through her window, Ji-won saw them trying to hold Thalvin down as he fought to get up. She couldn't hear the words, but she could read the desperation in his movements. He was trying to get to his pups. It took 4 warriors to restrain him. The doctor administered something, and slowly, Thalvin's struggles weakened. He collapsed back onto the bed, but even unconscious, his body was tense. Ji-won sat on her bed, her hands shaking slightly. She'd seen wounded soldiers before, seen parents separated from their children by war and distance. But something about this felt different. Wrong. The next morning, she made a decision. She packed a small bag with some of her personal rations. Better quality food than the standard military issue. She added a medical scanner from her kit, just in case. Then, she walked toward the den area. A warrior stopped her at the gate. "This area is restricted. I know. I just wanted to check if the young ones needed anything. Everyone seems busy with the emergency." The warrior's ears flattened. "The young are fine." Ji-won nodded and turned away. But she noticed something. The warrior looked uncertain. Guilty, even. He knew the pups weren't being properly cared for, but what could he do? They were stretched thin defending the compound. She'd have to find another way. That evening, as patrols changed and warriors focused on the perimeter, Ji-won slipped around the back of the den building. There was a maintenance access that led to the equipment bays nearby. The pup's yard connected to that area through a gap in the fencing, probably for emergencies. She squeezed through, her heart pounding, and found herself in the shadows near where the 3 pups were huddled together for warmth. They looked up. Startled, the 2 larger ones moved protectively in front of the smallest. Ji-won stopped, holding very still. "Hey," she said softly. "It's okay. I just brought some food." The 3 pups stared at Ji-won with wide amber eyes. The 2 larger ones, both dark-furred like their father, positioned themselves between her and the smallest, the gray one. Their small bodies were tense, ready to run or fight despite being barely half Ji-won's size. Ji-won slowly sat down on the ground, making herself smaller, less threatening. She opened her bag and pulled out a protein bar, the good kind she'd brought from Earth. The scent of real food, not synthetic rations, drifted across the small space. The smallest pup's nose twitched. Her ears perked up slightly. "I'm not going to hurt you," Ji-won said quietly. "I just noticed you weren't eating much. This tastes better than those ration packs. I promise." She broke the protein bar into pieces and set them on the ground, then pushed them slowly toward the pups. They didn't move, just watched her with that intense, predatory focus that even young veterans possessed. Ji-won pulled out another bar and took a bite herself, showing them it was safe. "See? Just food." The smallest pup took a tentative step forward. One of the larger ones made a soft sound, like a warning, but didn't stop her. The gray pup crept closer, her eyes fixed on the food. She was so thin. They all were, Ji-won realized. How long had they been getting inadequate meals? The pup's small hand reached out and grabbed a piece of protein bar. She sniffed it carefully, then took a tiny bite. Her eyes widened. She ate the rest quickly, then looked at Ji-won with something like wonder. The other 2 watched their sister eat and survive. Slowly, they moved forward and took pieces for themselves. Soon, all 3 were eating, their tails wagging slightly, despite their obvious wariness. Ji-won smiled. "There you go. Not so bad. Right?" She stayed with them for 20 minutes, just sitting quietly while they ate. When the food was gone, the gray pup moved a little closer to Ji-won, studying her with curious eyes. "My name is Ji-won," she said softly. "What's yours?" Of course, the pup couldn't answer in any language Ji-won understood, but she made a small sound, almost like a chirp, and tilted her head. "I'll come back tomorrow," Ji-won promised. "If you want." She slipped away before anyone noticed she was gone, her heart lighter than it had been in days. The next morning, Jiwon checked on Thalven through her window. The medical building was still heavily guarded, and the warriors' faces were grim. The fever wasn't breaking. She overheard 2 guards talking as she walked to the work site. "He's getting worse. The doctor says if the fever doesn't break by tomorrow, don't say it. The Alpha will pull through. He always does." But the first guard's expression said he wasn't so sure. That evening, Jiwon returned to the equipment bay with more food. The pups were waiting for her this time, pressed against the fence. When she appeared, their tails wagged. The smallest one made that chirping sound again. "Hey, you remembered me." Jiwon sat down and pulled out more protein bars, some dried fruit, and a pouch of nutrient paste that actually tasted decent. "I brought variety today." She fed them slowly, breaking the food into pieces. As they ate, she talked to them in a soft voice, the way she'd talk to any scared child. She told them about Earth, about the stars she'd seen, about nothing and everything. The gray pup finished her food and then did something that made Jiwon's breath catch. She climbed into Jiwon's lap, curled up, and closed her eyes. "Oh," Jiwon whispered. "Oh, sweetheart. You're okay now." The other 2 pups moved closer, drawn by their sister's trust. Soon, all 3 were pressed against Jiwon, soaking in warmth and comfort they'd been missing for days. Jiwon looked at her own meal sitting in her bag. A single ration bar, meant to be her dinner. She looked at the 3 small bodies curled against her, at their visible ribs and dull fur. Then, she opened the bar, broke it into 3 pieces, and gave it to them. She'd eat tomorrow. This became her routine. Every evening after work, she'd slip into the equipment bay and feed the pups from her own supplies. She started rationing her meals, eating half in the morning, saving the rest for them. Her own stomach complained, but she ignored it. They needed the food more than she did. On the 3rd evening, the gray pup climbed into her lap as soon as Jiwon sat down. The other 2 leaned against her sides. Jiwon found herself humming an old Earth lullaby while they ate, something her own mother had sung to her long ago. "Your father is very sick," she told them quietly, even though they probably couldn't understand. "But he's strong. He'll get better. And when he does, he'll come back to you." She hoped that was true. The medical building's lights burned late into the night, every night. The warriors' expressions grew more worried. Even Dravak, who seemed carved from stone, looked strained. On the 4th evening, Jiwon brought the last of her good food. She'd be down to basic rations after this, the bland protein blocks that tasted like cardboard. But the pups needed this more. She was sitting with them, the smallest one asleep in her lap, while the other 2 ate. When she heard a sound behind her, a low, rattling growl, Jiwon's blood went cold. She turned slowly and saw Thalven standing in the doorway of the equipment bay. He looked terrible. His fur was matted with dried blood and sweat. His face was pale, and his eyes were bright with fever. He was barely standing, one hand braced against the wall for support, but his eyes were locked on Jiwon, on the human holding his youngest child. "What?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper but filled with dangerous intent. "Are you doing with my pups?" Jiwon's mind raced. The pups had woken at their father's voice and were making small, distressed sounds. They wanted to go to him, but they were also comfortable where they were, confused by the conflict. "Commander Thalven," Jiwon said, keeping her voice calm and steady even though her heart was hammering. You should be in medical. You're badly injured. Answer my question." He tried to take a step forward, and his leg buckled. He caught himself, but pain flashed across his face. Jiwon wanted to go to him, to help stabilize him. But she was afraid any sudden movement would trigger his predator instincts. They were hungry. No one was feeding them properly. "I had extra food, so I shared it. You had no right." His voice was getting weaker, but no less angry. "They are not yours to feed. Not yours to touch." You are. He didn't finish the sentence. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. Jiwon gently moved the gray pup off her lap and rushed to Thalvin's side. He'd reopened his wound. Fresh blood soaked through the bandages. She pressed her hands against the injury, trying to stop the bleeding. "Someone help," she shouted toward the compound. "The commander is here." The pups crowded around, making frightened sounds. The smallest one pressed against Thalvin's face, trying to wake him. Warriors rushed in, weapons drawn, then stopped at the sight before them. Their alpha unconscious, bleeding, being treated by the human engineer. His pups clustered around both of them. Drevak pushed through the crowd. His eyes went from Thalvin to Jiwon to the pups. Understanding flickered across his face. "Get the doctor," he ordered. "Now." 2 warriors ran. Drevak knelt beside Jiwon. "What happened?" He was standing there. Jiwon gestured to the doorway. "He saw me with the pups and collapsed. The wound reopened. I need bandages, clean water, and my medical kit from my quarters. Please." Drevak stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Get them," he told another warrior. The doctor arrived, her expression furious. "I told you to restrain him. He shouldn't be walking around. He was asking for his pups," one of the medical assistants said helplessly. "He kept trying to get up. We thought he was sleeping, but bring a stretcher." Carefully, the doctor knelt beside Jiwon and examined the wound. Her eyes widened slightly. "You applied pressure at the correct points. You have medical training?" Actor 4. You Actor 4. Actor 4. You have applied pressure. Actor 4. You have medical training. Field medicine. Frontier contractor basics. The doctor nodded slowly. "Keep pressure there while we prepare to move him." They worked together, human and Vethron, to stabilize Thalvin enough to transport. The pups refused to leave, so Drevak carefully carried all 3 of them along as they brought their father back to medical. Jiwon followed, her hands covered in Thalvin's dark blood, her mind racing. What would happen now? Would they punish her? Exile her from the compound? She'd broken their rules, touched their alpha's children, and been found out. But as they laid Thalvin on the medical bed, and the doctor worked to reclose his wound, she found she didn't regret it. Those pups had needed help, and she'd given it. Whatever happened next, at least they'd been fed. Jiwon sat on a bench outside the medical building, waiting. Her hands were clean now. The blood washed away, but she could still feel the warmth of it. Inside, the doctor was working on Thalvin. The pups had been taken to a side room where they could be watched, but kept out of the way. Drevak stood nearby, his arms crossed, watching her with an unreadable expression. Other warriors moved through the compound, but several stayed close. Guarding her? Guarding against her? She wasn't sure. An hour passed. Then 2. The sun set, and the compound lights came on, harsh and bright against the darkness. Finally, the medical building door opened, and the doctor stepped out. She looked exhausted. "He will live," she said. "The wound is properly closed now. The fever should break by morning." Her eyes fixed on Jiwon. "You kept him from bleeding out. If you had not been there when he collapsed, if you had not known where to apply pressure, he would have died before we arrived." Jiwon nodded slowly. She didn't know what to say. "The pups want to see you," the doctor continued. "They refuse to settle." "Perhaps you could." "She has no right," Drevak said, his voice hard. "She violated protocol. She approached the Alpha's young without permission. She fed them." The doctor interrupted. "While we were too busy to notice they were being neglected. She fed them from her own mouth." The doctor's expression softened slightly. "That means something, Drevak. You know it does." Drevak's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Jiwon stood. "May I see them?" "Just to make sure they're okay. Then I'll go back to my quarters and stay there. I won't cause more trouble." The doctor gestured for her to follow. Inside the medical building, the side room held 3 small beds. The pups were curled together on one of them, their eyes open and watchful. When Jiwon entered, the smallest one made that chirping sound and reached out her small hands. Jiwon's heart broke a little. She sat on the edge of the bed, and the gray pup immediately climbed into her lap. The other two pressed close, seeking comfort. "Hey, little ones," Jiwon whispered. "Your dad is going to be okay. He just needs to rest." She stayed with them, humming that old lullaby until they fell asleep. When she tried to ease them back onto the bed and leave, the gray pup's hand caught her sleeve. Even asleep, she held on. Jiwon looked up and found Dravak watching from the doorway. "Why did you do it?" he asked quietly. "You know, humans are not welcome here. You could have ignored them, finished your contract, and left. Why risk it?" Jiwon looked down at the three sleeping pups. "Because they're children, and they were hungry. Nothing else mattered." Dravak stared at her for a long moment. In Vethran culture, feeding another's young is a sacred trust. It is only done by pack members of the highest honor, by those who would die to protect those young. "I didn't know that. I just knew they needed help." "I know." Dravak's expression was complicated. "That is what makes it more significant. You did not do it for status or recognition. You did it simply because it needed doing." He paused. "The Alpha will want to speak with you when he wakes. Be prepared." Proper," Jiwon nodded. She gently freed her sleeve from the gray pup's grip and stood. As she left the room, she glanced toward the main medical area where Thalvin lay. His breathing was steadier now, his face more peaceful. The fever seemed to be breaking. That night, Jiwon couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the moment Thalvin had seen her with his pups, the rage in his eyes. What would he do when he fully recovered? She'd seen his strength, his authority. If he wanted her gone from this planet, she'd be on the next transport ship. The next morning, a warrior came to her quarters. "The Alpha wants to see you." Jiwon's stomach twisted. But she followed him to the medical building. Thalvin was sitting up in bed, his wound freshly bandaged. He looked weak, but alert. His amber eyes tracked her as she entered. The doctor and Dravak stood nearby. The three pups were curled on a mat in the corner, still sleeping. "Leave us," Thalvin said to the others. His voice was rough, but stronger than yesterday. "Alpha, you should not," the doctor began. "Leave us." They filed out, though Dravak gave Jiwon a look that might have been warning or encouragement. She couldn't tell. Alone with Thalvin, Jiwon stood straight, meeting his eyes. If he was going to exile her, she wouldn't show fear. "You fed my pups," Thalvin said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "For how long?" "4 days. Since you left on the mission, from your own food." "Yes." Thalvin's eyes narrowed. "The doctor showed me your ration logs. You cut your portions in half. Some days, you gave them everything you had." His voice grew harder. "Why?" Jiwon took a breath. "Because they were hungry and scared. Because everyone was too busy to notice they weren't being properly cared for. Because..." She hesitated, then continued. "Because when I looked at them, I saw children who needed help. That's all that mattered. They are not human children. They're still children." Thalvin was quiet for a long moment. "You understand what you did? By Vethran law? Feeding another's young without permission is either the highest honor or the worst insult, depending on intent. Warriors have died over such matters." Jiwon's hands clenched at her sides. "I didn't know your laws. I'm sorry if I insulted you. But I'm not sorry I fed them." Something flickered in Thalvin's eyes. "You should be sorry. You should be afraid. I am Alpha. I could have you removed from this planet for touching my pups." He paused. "But you are not afraid." "Why?" "I am afraid," Jiwon admitted. "But it doesn't change anything. If I had to do it again, knowing what might happen, I'd still feed them. Because leaving children hungry and scared when I could help? That's not something I can do." Thalvin studied her for a long moment. Then, he did something unexpected. He gestured to a chair near his bed. Sit. Warily, Ji-won sat. Tell me about humans, Thalvin said. Tell me why you would sacrifice for young that are not yours. So Ji-won talked. She told him about Earth. About how humans survived not by being the strongest or the fastest, but by working together. She told him about communities that raised children collectively, about strangers who would help a lost child without thinking twice. She told him about the human instinct to protect the vulnerable, even at personal cost. We're not warriors like you, she said. We're not as strong or as fast, but we learned to take care of each other. It's how we survived. And maybe that's our strength. Not power, but compassion. Thalvin listened without interrupting. When she finished, he looked toward his sleeping pups. I have been too harsh in my judgment of humans. I saw weakness where I should have seen a different kind of strength. He turned back to her. You saved my pups from hunger. You saved me from bleeding out. These are debts I cannot easily repay. I don't want repayment. I just wanted to help. I know. That makes it more significant. Thalvin shifted, wincing at the pain. I saw you, in my fever dreams. I saw you with my pups. I saw little Sora in your arms, content and safe. I thought I was hallucinating. His voice softened. But it was real. You cared for them as if they were your own. Ji-won felt her throat tighten. Sora? The gray one? Yes. My youngest. My mate's last gift before she died. Thalvin's eyes grew distant. The others are KL and Rin. They are strong, like their mother. But Sora is small and gentle. I worry for her. She's braver than you think, Ji-won said softly. She was the first to trust me. Thalvin's mouth curved slightly, almost a smile. Like her mother in that way too. He was quiet for a moment, then spoke formally. Ji-won Park of Earth, you have fed my young from your own mouth. You have given without asking for return. You have honored them with your care. By the laws of my people, I offer you a place in my pack, not as a subordinate, but as an honored member. One who has proven their worth through action, not words. Ji-won stared at him. What does that mean? It means you are under my protection. It means my pack is your pack, if you choose to accept. It means no warrior in this compound will treat you with disrespect again. I'm just here on contract. I'll be leaving when the work is done. Or you could stay. Extend your contract. Help us rebuild what was damaged. Teach us more about humans, about their ways. Thalvin's eyes were serious. My pups need someone who understands gentleness. I can teach them to be strong, to fight, to survive. But who will teach them compassion? Ji-won looked at the 3 sleeping pups, at little Sora curled so peacefully. She thought about leaving, about moving on to the next contract, the next world. Always alone, always temporary. Or she could stay. She could be part of something. I need to think about it, she said finally. That is fair. Thalvin leaned back against his pillows, exhaustion catching up with him. But know this. You have changed how I see your species, perhaps how others will see them too. News of what happened spread through the compound faster than Ji-won expected. By the afternoon, every warrior knew that the human engineer had been feeding the Alpha's pups, that she'd saved Thalvin's life when he collapsed, that he'd offered her a place in his pack. The reactions were mixed. Some warriors nodded with respect when Ji-won walked past. Others still looked at her with suspicion. But no one blocked her path anymore. No one told her to leave areas of the compound. The invisible barriers that had surrounded her since arrival were dissolving. Ji-won spent the morning finishing her work on the drilling equipment. The hydraulic systems were finally running smoothly. All the safety protocols restored. It was good work, the kind she took pride in. But her mind kept drifting to the medical building, to 3 small pups and their wounded father. At midday, Drevok found her. The Alpha wishes to see you again. He has something to show you. Jiwon wiped oil from her hands and followed him. Inside the medical building, Thalvin was standing, leaning heavily on a support rail but on his feet. The doctor hovered nearby, clearly unhappy with her patient's stubbornness. The three pups were playing in the corner. When they saw Jiwon, they rushed over. Kale and Rin pressed against her legs, while Sora made grabbing motions with her hands, until Jiwon picked her up. "They've been asking for you," the doctor said, a hint of amusement in her voice. Well, not asking in words, but making it very clear, they wanted the human. Jiwon held Sora close, feeling the pup's small heartbeat against her chest. "Hey, little one, are you being good?" Sora chirped and patted Jiwon's face with her small hand. Thalvin watched this with an expression Jiwon couldn't quite read. "They have bonded with you. In 4 days, you became part of their pack." He paused. "I cannot undo that bond, and I would not want to. They need you." "What are you saying?" "I am saying I want you to stay. Formally. Extend your contract for at least 6 months. Help me raise them. Teach them about humans, about compassion." Thalvin's voice was serious. "I can give them strength and discipline, but you can give them something I cannot. Something they lost when their mother died." Jiwon looked at the three pups, at their bright eyes and wagging tails. She thought about her life before this, moving from contract to contract, never staying anywhere long enough to build real connections. Always alone. "I'll stay," she said quietly. "But I need proper living quarters, if I'm going to be around them regularly, and access to better food supplies. And done." Thalvin gestured to Drevak. "Make arrangements. She gets quarters in the den building, adjacent to mine. Full access to all compound facilities. And increase her contract payment. She is packed now. We take care of our own." Drevak nodded and left. The doctor smiled slightly. About time this compound had someone with sense around those pups. Over the next week, everything changed. Jiwon moved into her new quarters. 3 times the size of her old room, and comfortable. She had a kitchen where she could prepare real food, a workspace for her tools, and most importantly, a door that connected directly to the pup's living area. Thalvin recovered slowly but steadily. Jiwon helped with his wound care, teaching the doctor some human medical techniques that worked surprisingly well on Vethron physiology. They talked during these sessions about culture and history and the differences between their peoples. "We Vethrans measure worth through combat," Thalvin said one evening as Jiwon changed his bandages. "The strongest leads. The weak are protected but not valued." He winced as she cleaned the wound. "But you showed me a different kind of strength. The strength to care for others at cost to yourself, to see need and meet it without thinking of reward." "That's not strength," Jiwon said. "That's just being decent." "No, it is strength, and it is rare, even among my own people." Thalvin watched her work. "You have changed this compound, Jiwon. The warriors see how I treat you now, with respect. They see my pups follow you around, happy and healthy. They are learning that humans are not weak, just different." Jiwon finished bandaging the wound. "Your people aren't so different from mine. We all want to protect our young. We all want to survive. We just go about it in different ways." The pups became her constant companions. Kale would bring her small gifts, rocks, and pieces of metal he found around the compound, presenting them with great ceremony. Rin followed her everywhere, curious about her work and asking questions in broken standard language he was learning. And little Sora rarely left her side, content to sit in Jiwon's lap while she worked on equipment schematics or played simple games. One evening, a transport ship arrived carrying new supplies and replacement personnel. Among them was a human trader who'd heard stories about the woman living with the Vethrans. He found Jiwon in the equipment bay, Sora sleeping in her lap while she calibrated a sensor array. "Is it true?" he asked, staring. "You're actually part of their pack?" "I guess so," Jiwon said. "But they're Vethrans. They hate outsiders. They barely tolerate other species. They're not so bad once you get to know them. Sora stirred in her sleep, and G1 automatically adjusted her hold, keeping the pup comfortable. They're just protective of their own, like anyone would be. The trader shook his head in amazement. You've done something impossible here. People talk about this colony now. About the human who won the respect of an alpha. Other species are noticing. After he left, Dravok approached. He's right, you know. Word is spreading. You've changed how others see humans. Made them reconsider their assumptions. I didn't do anything special, G1 protested. You did exactly what was needed when no one else would. Dravok looked at Sora, sleeping peacefully. The Alphas young are the future of this pack. You helped ensure they have a future. That is not nothing. A month after G1's decision to stay, Thalvin gathered the entire compound for an announcement. Warriors assembled in the central yard. Curious and respectful, G1 stood to the side with the pups, uncertain why she'd been asked to attend this formal gathering. Thalvin stood on a platform, fully healed now, imposing and powerful. Warriors of this pack, he began, his voice carrying across the yard. We have always measured strength through combat, through victory in battle. This is our way. And it has served us well, the warriors murmured agreement. But recently, I learned that strength takes many forms. Thalvin's eyes found G1 in the crowd. When I was wounded, when I could not care for my own young, a human stepped forward. She fed them from her own rations. She cared for them with no thought of reward. She saved my life when I collapsed. The yard was silent now, every warrior listening. G1 Park of Earth showed me that compassion is its own kind of strength. That caring for the helpless is as brave as facing an enemy in combat. Thalvin's voice grew stronger. She is small by our standards. She carries no weapons, but she has the heart of a warrior and the soul of a caregiver. She is pack. And any who disrespect her, disrespect me. The warriors struck their chests in unison. The veteran sign of acknowledgement and respect. G1 felt her eyes sting with unexpected tears. Thalvin gestured for her to join him on the platform. Nervous, G1 climbed up, the three pups scrambling after her. When she reached Thalvin's side, he placed a hand on her shoulder. This human has shown us something important, he said to the assembled warriors. That strength is not only in how hard we can fight, but in what we choose to protect. That honor is not only in victory, but in sacrifice for others. She is proof that humans, though different from us, have much to teach us. Kael and Rin pressed against G1's legs. Sora climbed into her arms, and G1 held her close, looking out at the sea of veteran warriors. At their respectful faces, she felt something shift inside her. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged somewhere. That night, G1 sat in the pups' room, reading them a story from her datapad. It was an earth tale, about a small creature who helped a great beast, and how that act of kindness changed both their lives. The pups listened with rapt attention, even though they'd heard it 3 times already. Thalvin stood in the doorway, watching. When the story ended, and the pups were drowsy, he spoke softly. They see you as their mother now. You know that, yes? G1 looked at the 3 sleepy pups, at their trusting eyes and peaceful faces. I'm not trying to replace her, I know, but she would be glad they have you, glad they know what it means to be loved across all boundaries. Thalvin sat down beside her. Thank you, G1, for seeing my children when others looked away, for caring when it cost you, for teaching me that strength comes in many forms. Thank you for letting me stay, for accepting me. You earned your place here. Thalvin watched Sora finally fall asleep, her small hand wrapped around G1's finger. You showed us something important. That family is not about what species you are, or how strong you are, or where you come from. It's about who stands beside you when things are hard, who feeds you when you're hungry, Who cares when no one else does? Jiwon smiled. That sounds like something a human would say. Perhaps I am learning. Thalvin's expression softened. My pups are lucky to have you. This pack is lucky to have you. They sat together in comfortable silence as the pups slept, human and Vethran. Unlikely allies who had become something more. Outside, the colony continued its work under alien stars, but in this small room, there was only warmth and peace, and the quiet breathing of 3 young ones who knew they were loved. In the days that followed, other species heard the story. The tale spread through trading posts and military outposts, across colonies and stations. The story of a human woman who won the respect of a Vethran alpha by doing something simple and profound. Feeding hungry children from her own rations. And slowly, attitudes began to shift. Humans were seen with new eyes, not as weak or inferior, but as possessing their own unique strength. The strength of compassion, the courage to care. Jiwon never sought fame or recognition. She continued her work, raised the pups alongside Thalven, and lived her life quietly. But she'd done something important without meaning to. She'd shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology or strength. It was their willingness to care for those who needed it most, even at personal cost. And that was a power that could change everything.